Good morning, bunnies. So, lore episode number 2. I have been challenged by some people on the IRC channel to talk about the Jove in this one. So you might actually get 2 matches out of this video. I'm not sure. It's going to very much depend on whether or not this battle goes long, because there's a lot to talk about. Okay, so the Jove. Who are they? Where did they come from? And why are they important? Well, let's start with where they came from. For that one, we have to go back. We actually have to go back to how New Eden was settled in the first place. Okay? New Eden was first settled by, Terrans coming through the Eve Gate. When they did, they came in massive groups, in really big ships, because the Sol system was basically running out of resources. Well, the entire Sol universe, that whole universe that they spread out from, was just overdone. War, control by corporations. It was like New Eden, only worse. If you can believe that. They came through as a people, but they came through in 2 ways. They came through as the Jove, but there were the architects and there were the caretakers. The caretakers were those who lived outside of the augmented reality that the caretakers lived in. Okay? The architects lived inside of a construct. It was crappy. It was like the Matrix, only worse. Because, it wasn't all that. There weren't any features. It was just, it was a collective consciences, but that's it, right? So, the caretakers' jobs were to help ease the transition from the virtual reality to the real world and back. And so that was their job, and they did it for quite a while, actually. They came through in 7 ships and settled the Heaven constellation. What we call the main system was Utopia. So they settled the Utopia system in the Heaven constellation and started branching out from there. They were actually one of the most technologically weak groups to come through the gates. Okay? They didn't have, all the kit that basically everybody else did. So they came through. They went to the Heaven. They flew to the Heaven constellation with their warp drives, which at the time moved at I believe it's 0.00025 AUs a second, which is I think like 1.5 times the speed of light, maybe just over the speed of light, something like that. It was not very fast. We'll put it that way. Took about 30 2-ish years to travel from where the Eve Gate was to the Heaven Constellation. When they got there, they did exactly what they were supposed to. They built the gates, they settled, and they constructed. The architects didn't leave. They grew too accustomed to the construct. They liked being in the virtual reality too much. So they never left. The caretakers continued to do their job for as long as they could. They took care of the architects, doing all sorts of stuff. But the architects, because they were not constrained by, limitations, they kept advancing really quickly in their technology. Yeah, sorry, I am not reading this off of anything. I'm actually doing this from memory. And no, my memory is not that great. And I'm trying to fight people at the same time. And of course, hitting all the wrong buttons. So yeah. The Jove. Right? Where the Jove people actually came from were the caretakers. Now, technically, the caretakers and the architects were the same people. Some were selected to sleep, others were selected to not. The architects became the sleepers. They grew too accustomed to their life within the construct. They improved the construct to such a rate that they no longer wanted to live in the real world. And they became the most powerful and most technologically advanced group in New Eden, right? Because the Eve Gate collapsed. Huge event, wiped out about 60% of everyone. Destroyed technology. Because of their distance from the Eve Gate when it happened, the sleepers mostly remained unaffected. I mean, it put them back a ways, but they survived. The Jove, the sleepers, they all survived. So we're going to get back into another battle here because we've got more to talk about. We've barely even scratched the surface here. Excuse me. So, the now Jove are living out their lives. They're still taking care of the architects who are sleeping. But they have two rules, right? They don't procreate like everybody else. They don't have kids. All of their children, Architect and Jove, are clones, right? They, as a community, say, we need more people, okay? They go into the genetic stock and select a bunch of desirable genes, put them together, and grow a new clone, right? It comes out fully adult, and then they train them, right? They educate them, they bring them up, they teach them how to think, all that fun stuff. And so, that's how the Jove and the architects procreate. That's rule number 1, right? Rule number 2 is, if you're going to be in the construct, you must have a mortal body, right? There has to be some place for you to go if you want to leave the construct, right? So if you want to awaken from being a sleeper, there must be a body to awaken to. And so, if they're If the architects think they need more people, they grow, they basically had the caretakers grow more clones, and then they train up a new consciousness within the construct. Fine. Okay? After a while, some problems happen. Nobody's quite clear. Lore-wise, it's really not known what happened. But the Jovian disease showed up, right? It's a really odd disease. But it basically just makes you stop. First you stop having emotions, then you stop caring, and then you just cease to exist. It's a wasting disease. I believe they called it degrading. It's really... That part of the lore is really murky. Anyway. That's the... Right. The Jove thought the architects would help them. They didn't. They fled the Heaven constellation. When that wasn't far enough, they actually fled the entire galaxy. Right? We now know that they left for what is called wormhole space. Or W space. In Eve. It's a completely different galaxy that Eve players can access through unstable wormholes. Well, somehow the sleepers with their construction ships jumped there, and that's where they live now. But we'll get back to them in a minute. The Jove, however, couldn't leave. They didn't have the technology because the architects never shared that with them. As it got further and further down the line, the architects trusted the caretakers less and less. And eventually they just left. That's, the whole thing, right? They stopped trusting them, so they left. The Jove, however, did, still had more technology than the rest of the races in New Eden. And a faction of them used that to their advantage. And since they could no longer take care of the sleepers, they decided they were going to be the caretakers of the rest of society. Into this, you have to add the constructs. During the time just before, or assumed just before, the Jove disease arose, a construct appeared within the construct. Yeah, kind of confusing, but bear with me for a second. It was an AI, right? Very advanced, born completely within the construct, had no body, right? It was very much like the sleepers and the architects because, it thought like they did and stuff like that, but it didn't have a body to leave the construct as. So it violated their rules. Well, they didn't really know what to do about it. They kind of ignored it, and then all of a sudden, more of them started showing up. And that's where that section of the lore disappears, right? We don't really know anything more about the construct, other than one thing. The other is no longer in the construct, right? The AI has left the construct, and it has actually taken up residence in the body of, and I'm going to mispronounce her name, I know, Empress Jamal. I don't know the rest of her name. I can't remember the rest of her name offhand, but Empress Jamal, right? She, during the succession trials for the Amar, which I'll probably talk about later, she did what was forbidden to her and clone jumped. She had become immortal, they weren't supposed to, and instead of sacrificing herself, she basically just clone jumped, and when she did, the other knew about it ahead of time and managed to implant itself into the stream. Which, in relation to the last video I just did about fluid routers, is a rather difficult proposition. Because the fluid router, her clone was basically set up on the other side of a fluid router. So to do that, he somehow either had to be in between her and the fluid router on her end, which is very hard, or in between the fluid router and the clone machine. More than likely, he had actually taken over the fluid router itself. So that when her consciousness streamed into the cloning machine to be cloned, it added its own consciousness to that stream. So when she cloned, it cloned. And it got out of the construct in this manner. Which is very not good for the rest of us because, yeah. We'll get into it later when we talk about her and the Amar and all that. Okay, so we're talking about the Jove, right? Now we're going to rewind from where the other comes out of and talk about we're going to talk about we'll talk about what they do, right? The Jove are the people who introduced several things to the rest of New Eden, right? After the one empire got cloning technology, the Jove are the people who gave it to everyone else, right? When one empire got warp technology, the Jove are the ones who gave it to everybody else. When one of the empires got basically, whenever one of the empires got anything that would give them an edge over any of the other empires, the Jove made sure all the other empires got it at the same time. So there was always parity amongst the four empires. Which really did a lot of social engineering, is what the Jove did. They were always trying to make sure that one empire wouldn't take over from everybody else. Because they didn't want, they didn't want rivals to their power. This case, it's never really been tested all that much. Rivaling the Jove power. I'll get to some other stuff in a second. Sorry, I'm really scatterbrained here because I'm really hard to think about and remember all the proper lore while trying to not die horribly as I usually do. I mean, I know we all want me to die horribly because it's funny and crap, but I'm trying to make sure all of my facts for you guys are accurate in regards to the Jove. Because to me, that's the more important thing at the moment. So the Jove. Like I said, they did a lot of social engineering. They did a lot of messing around with the empires. And this is when we start getting into some murky areas again. Because, this is the time when the Jove disease really is taking a hold of the Jove people. And they start to disappear from the cluster. The Jove helped set up the Concord and the Ioani Treaty. This it basically stopped several very large wars that were in the process of happening. So that... But yeah. So they set up Concord. They gave out, they ensured that everybody had the same tech. They ensured that everything was even. Q about, I think it was 15 years, YC 15, or YC 100, I think it was. No. YC 02, YC 03, the Jove introduce the pod. They give us implants, they give us clone technology that functions with the clone technology and makes it so that we can operate spaceships by ourselves, right? So that we are more powerful. And so the Jove introduced that, and that's when the pod pilot comes into play. And then the Jove disappear. I mean, literally. They're just gone. It's referenced in several pieces of material that even the Concord representative, which, he doesn't really go anywhere, hasn't been seen in several years. So that's difficulty number one. Or clue number one that the Jove are retreating from our reality. There are rumors that the Jove are all dead. I don't believe this personally as part of the, not because I'm stubborn or anything, but I've seen some other parts of the lore. And of course the sleepers are still alive, and genetically they're Jove. So there's that. Okay, so we've got the Jove disappearing. They spread all the tech. Bunnies. Yes, bunnies would be next, wouldn't they? But that leads back to the Empress as well. So like I said, Empress Jamal, clone jumps during the succession trials. Her clone gets intercepted. Now, what does that mean? It means that she now inhabits the same body as a construct that, while not actually built by the Jove, was fostered by them, kind of, right? It, however, wholly rejected their teachings, right? And its main objective, as far as we're aware, is to destroy everything. Basically, it hates everybody, hates everyone, wants everyone dead, and will do everything in its power to assure that. But it really hates the Jove. It really hates the sleepers. So, it basically pushed for the bunnies to exist. It pushed all of the it pushed the wars, it pushed the people, it pushed the research, it pushed the technology, all so that we would, we would basically start building immortal troops on the ground. Because it knew to do that, we would need implants. And it provided us with a very easy way to get them. It showed us the sleepers. Now, this next bit is completely conjecture on my part. I could very well be incredibly wrong, but I don't think I am on this part. I want to say YC13, it probably was YC12. YC is actually Yuana conventions, the number of years since the treaty was signed between the four empires. So yeah, that's how long they've been actively socially engineering the people of New Eden. Anyway. So yeah. I think it was like I said, right now is YC15. So it was 2 or 3 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago. Sorry. Excuse me. Sorry, my stomach's not feeling very well right now. It was like I said, 3 or 4 years ago now that a series of explosions happened. These explosions led to the opening of, the destruction of Selene and the opening of a bunch of unstable wormholes leading into sleeper space. Right? A lot of people see this as chance. I don't. Because it's very convenient, right? That all of a sudden, unreasonable explosion happens, and then we suddenly have access to where the sleepers have been hiding for years, right? No. That was engineered somehow. So yeah, we might have to go into a part 2. They'll finish with this one part. Explosion happened, destabilized a large number of specific types of suns, and then the wormholes started opening up. These wormholes allow us to go to sleeper space. Once we got to sleeper space, it engineered the collection of sleeper clones, which allowed it to harvest implants to make the mercenaries that we all use in Dust. This, of course, it's genocide to make us, and then we go nuts because there's sleepers in our heads. But yeah, so that'll be all for now. That's 2 matches. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And next time we'll pick up and go into the really insane stuff about the Jove. Alright, bye.